JayEmm on Cars is kindly sponsored by Car Vertical, the only car history checking service you'll need, which references more than 20 databases globally to make sure you don't buy a car with a hidden past. For a special discount on the service, please use the link in the description down below. And now, today's feature presentation.
Hello everybody! Today you find me at long last behind the wheel of a first generation Bentley Continental GT. And I'll be honest, this is not a car that I've ever really cared for. But in the last couple of years, I've developed a real desire to try it out. And so I'm very thankful to this car's owner, Michael, for finally giving me the opportunity. Now, I have driven the modern Bentley Conti GT, and although I much prefer the looks of the newer generation over this one, I have to say I found it just a little bit disappointing in its execution. There was criminal amounts of turbo lag, and I felt like the car was way too harsh for what should be really a proper continent-crushing machine. After all, it's in the title, GT Grand Tourer. Anyway, what have we got here today? Well, this is a 2009 Continental GT Speed. Now, that means that it's part of the sort of very last of the first generation cars. It was very heavily facelifted in 2011, so much so Bentley called it a new car, even though underneath it was still the same platform. And this is a really important car for Bentley and VW Group in general, because it was the first car that Bentley built under their new ownership. And that meant it really had to be pretty much a winning formula. And it turned out that it was, because they sold loads of them. Unfortunately, they sold many of them to footballers, and that was one of quite a few reasons why I just had no interest at all in the early Conti GTs. That and the fact that they were purportedly a very sporty car, yet weighed 2.3 tons. They also didn't really have room for 4 people in them. They got close, much closer than, say, a 911, a Jaguar or an Aston Martin, but not as good as the later generations. And then they also depreciated violently, getting down to about £30,000 in the classifieds within a few years of them coming out, but they then sort of stayed there. So they've always been just a little bit too expensive for me, for the most part, and then in recent years I've then decided they're probably just a little bit too old, not quite the right car. They'd be massively thirsty, having a 6-litre W12 twin-turbo as the only engine option, slushy-matic ZF gearbox, and a load of VW parts on the interior. So for those and many other reasons, I just decided the early Conti GT was not the car for me. However, I feel like I may have done this car a massive disservice because, alright, I never liked the looks of it, and I don't think I ever will. It looks too sort of soft and bloatfishy. But when you sit in it, yes, ignore the quite clearly VAG-sourced gear lever surround and some of the crappy old infotainment, and what you'll realise is that this is a proper Bentley. Now, how can you tell that? Well, it's very, very easy. The carpet. You see, the carpet in a luxury car is a bit like the sausage in a full English, or the prawn toast from a Chinese takeaway. There are many items in a full English breakfast where you can get away with sourcing a slightly cheaper item, the bacon, the bread, the hash browns, and maybe nobody would ever notice, but the sausage, you can't escape. Nobody likes a substandard sausage. So whenever I have a full English anywhere, the sausage is the first thing you try, because that'll tell you whether the rest of it's going to be any good. And in here, much the same. These carpets are beautiful, deep pile, gorgeous affairs, and that's the bit of the car you stand on in your shoes. The rest of it is just as lovely. Soft, beautiful leather, contrast stitching. It really is a fine thing. And this rides like a Bentley. In fact, I've had to do this review twice now for technical reasons, which means I can get to the chase even quicker second time round. This is one of my most vicious bits of the test strip. I'm going to put my foot down now. This car takes this road with absolutely no trouble whatsoever. And this is a really, really difficult test route. I've been dragged down this road in some cars that feel like they're going to spit you into hedge at any opportunity or leave you with very little of your spine intact. This absolutely sensational. There are a few things about this particular car that you should know. Because it is a 2009, it benefits from a number of upgrades brought to the model lineup in 2008. I don't really know these cars all that well, so if you want to know specifics, I'd suggest you go and find one of the many buyer's guides out there. But it included things like apparently a new steering wheel design, they were a little bit lighter, suspension was revised, they made a whole host of changes to make these cars a little bit better to drive and better to live with. I have to say in here, it doesn't actually feel as old as I thought that it might. Infotainment graphics aside, actually it's all still pretty decent. Power comes from the only choice of engine in the early cars, a 6-litre W12 twin turbo. The regular GT got about 550 horsepower, the Speed 600. It also got a healthy torque boost from 650 newton meters up to about 750. It's about 553 pound-feet. That means it's rather rapid. Yes, it will drink, but actually I think the 21.5 average MPG this car has achieved over the last few hundred miles, or since someone reset the trip counter, is pretty good for a car of this size, weight, and performance. The view out is all right, and actually this cockpit feels a lot more intimate and sporty than I ever imagined that it would. It's a very fine thing to be in, and just everything you touch is really quite lovely. Back seat space may not be great, but boot space surprisingly is. There's lots of room back there, really quite good. You also have, should you wish to change gear yourself, these sort of Lamborghini style paddles behind the wheel, which are also fixed to the steering column. Now, in the interest of science, I think we should try those out, and I'm going to see how the car performs when we put our foot down. So I'm going to leave it now in its sort of comfy mode, partly because I can't... Oh no, I found it. Got 4 settings for the shock absorbers. Let's go. Yeah, performance is what you might call authoritative. No, it's not a high-revving screamer of an engine, but you don't want that in a Bentley. It's just got serious grunt. Gearbox is actually... alright, not great. I'll be honest, but you know what, it's smooth, and that's kind of the most important thing for a car like this. There's quite a bit of noise from those tyres. They're pretty big old boots though, so not really a surprise. The action of the paddles is really nice, but to be honest, driving this thing in sporty suspension mode on the paddles just feels wrong. So you're going back into comfy mode. Ah yes, that's better. Oh lovely. And this is how you should really enjoy a Bentley. There are a few things I've noticed. First off, the aircon in this car, despite being set all the way down to low, is not actually blowing that cold. And the temperature gauge is sort of pegged at 90, which is sort of 3/4 of the way round. And it just looks a little bit higher than it should be. It is baking hot out there today, but I'm kind of surprised at that. That may not be an issue. I don't know. Bentley did improve quite a bit again with the 2nd generation of car, but honestly, they still didn't look different enough. The 3rd gen, they really fixed the looks. They made it a little bit larger too, so you could really get 4 people in it. But of course, they are still quite expensive. These ones, you can have pretty reasonably. So you can pick up a car much like this for about £30,000. And my word, you know something? In the twisties, for an absolutely enormous thing, it's making a damn fine case for itself. I'm aghast. I'm absolutely aghast. Yesterday I drove the Ferrari California, and that was a real turn up. Today I drive this. Throttle response seems much better than in the newer cars. They had awful amounts of turbo lag, really quite bad. And yes, they're still a bit present here, but everything responds just that little bit keener. All right, gearbox doesn't, but you know, the engine does. You do have to be wary of what this car is doing in the bends, because it's clearly still a great big mass, and although Bentley have been very clever with it, physics does intervene on occasion. There was an awful clonk as I went around one of those bends, and I do hope that wasn't something either falling off or breaking. It'll be fine, it'll be fine. I'm having a lot of fun driving this car. I really didn't think that I would. Seats are okay, yeah, alright, not massively supportive, but they're comfortable enough, and to be honest, the car probably starts to give way before you start to fall out of the seat, so actually it all works out okay in the end. I am using the paddles, and once you get into the groove and realise how slow to respond it is, actually it does make some sense. The action on them is beautiful. The steering wheel is really nice in the hand. Love the colour scheme in here. Really quite classy. Sort of cream and black two-tone. Fabulous. Very confusing that there is a key barrel here, yet this car has keyless entry. So the key's not in the slot, which is just odd. I expect you probably can put it in there and start the car that way. I don't know, but there's a start button down here, so I'm not quite sure what the deal with that is. So, 3-point turn, hill start torture test, commencing. This is a big car, not the biggest I've driven. A Maserati Gran Turismo is actually a little bit bigger, but about that much. Yeah, nice. We've got a reversing camera. We've got parking sensors front and rear. Lovely, easy, nice, fabulous. With these cars, I would say the biggest issue is going to be finding one that has been well looked after, because it is still a Bentley. It's not going to be cheap to run. It's based on a VW Phaeton, yes, but guess what? They're not cheap to run either, nor is the Audi A8. And this has a lot more performance than either of those. It's not the most sonorous engine, really, but you can't doubt its effectiveness. The handling is surprising too when you see how far forward that motor has been pushed into the engine bay. It's hanging right over the front axle. This is sensational. Absolutely brilliant. If you can get over the older infotainment, slightly slow gear change, and the potential for enormous balkage, I have to say, this car, hand on heart, is vastly superior to the new one. It's not just a little bit better, it's so much better. This is actual luxury. This is comfortable, this is refined, it's quick. Handles all right actually for a big bus. The handle's really good for a big bus actually, let's not beat about the bush here. Steering of course is on the light side, not masses in terms of texture or feedback, but you get a little bit of weighting through there. Obviously it's not that kind of car though, is it really? You get enough of an idea of what the car is doing between the steering and the seat. Pedals are nice, they actually look very pretty too. Brakes, very effective. You could get ceramics on these, but this one doesn't have them. Pedal feel is good. The whole thing just works. I hate the way it looks. I could never buy one based purely on that, but if you can get over that, oh, it's a brilliant car. Totally different to an Aston DB9, Maserati Gran Turismo, they're really quite firm. The 911, it is its own thing, it really stands out, and you know what? I can see why people bought these. I really can. Well, there we go. A huge surprise for me. Thanks all for watching. Please like, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.